How can I help save the environment? It's a question someone might ask an artificial intelligence tool like ChatGPT, which has made serious gains in terms of what it's capable of. And though there's talk that AI might hold the answers to the climate crisis, it's also part of the problem, one that's only going to get bigger as the technology advances and its use grows.
If you train on twice as much data, it takes twice as much energy.
Running AI consumes real resources, water and electricity, and so do we when we extract solutions from it. That's why plans for a Google data center were recently put on hold. Locals realized it could mean the end of drinking water for their neighborhood. And so we're asking, is AI going to help solve the climate crisis or make it worse? In this episode of Transforming Business. There's one thing AI can do that people can't: reading and then analyzing huge amounts of data quickly.
There's literally hundreds of thousands of data points coming in from a large building like this one into our system.
Data that can help us make decisions, like how to optimize the use of energy in a building so that none of it goes to waste. Henrik Ziegeldorf is the Chief Technology Officer of Adiffian, a small startup based in Cologne, Germany. Adiffian's product helps facility managers run large commercial buildings like this one, as efficiently as possible.
Imagine you have a facility manager in the technical building room, and there's an energy system, maybe the heating or the cooling, and it's displaying an error code 15. That person would have first to find the manual for the heating or the cooling and look up what is error code 15. Or that person could just ask our system, hey Adiffian, I'm in the technical building room standing in front of a whatever Fissmann heating, I'm getting displayed error code 15, how do I resolve it? And then our system knows the entire history of that building data-wise. That combined with the generative AI can actually like search through the history and then just tell that person, okay, for error code 15 in summer you have to do this and that, and by the way, here's also the manual.
Adiffian says it can help a building save up to 40% of energy and CO2 emissions. In buildings this large, making a small tweak can have a big impact. Adiffian uses AI to do a lot of different things. To help it structure and analyze the hundreds of thousands of data points it gets from a building's technical system, to factoring in variables like outside climate and building materials.
Each building is individual, meaning it has different tenants, it has different usage behaviors, it has also, from how it was built, different thermal behavior. If you have a wooden building as opposed to a concrete building, that's very different.
Adiffian is capitalizing on AI's ability to read and analyze data in a sliver of the amount of time it would take the world's best researchers to do the same. This speed is what makes AI so valuable to researchers and scientists looking for solutions to the climate crisis. Scientists are now using AI to map Antarctic icebergs 10,000 times faster than humans, and to track deforestation in real time, to better predict weather patterns, and to suggest more efficient waste management systems. There's no doubt AI has the potential to do good things for the climate, but not everything about it is a gift to the environment. Take this hum, for example, which residents in Chandler, Arizona hear 24/7. It's the sound of a data center processing the billions of requests it gets throughout the day. Think of AI as the brain and data centers as the body that supports the brain to work. There are more than 8,000 data centers in the world. According to the International Energy Agency, data center energy consumption is expected to double in 2026 to what it was in 2022.
When I started doing AI research a decade ago, I could run most of the AI systems I was using on my laptop.
This is Jesse Dodge. He's an AI research scientist.
But today we're using supercomputers, right? Some of the large AI systems that people are familiar with, like the chatbots or the image generation systems, those run on really large supercomputers and consume a potentially very large amount of electricity.
These very large amounts of electricity produce very large amounts of heat. And also that hum you just heard. To keep the data centers from overheating, they must be cooled down. And this is usually done in one of two ways, using air conditioning or water, and lots of it. Let's say I engage in a 15-question conversation with ChatGPT over how I could be more environmentally conscious. Experts calculate I would be consuming about a half liter of fresh water. And this is where AI can be a little problematic.
Access to clean water is competing with, let's say, local uses for it.
This is what got Google into a bit of hot water soon after it announced plans to build a $200 million data center in the working-class neighborhood of Cerrillos in Chile.
We all use Google Search and other Google tools. So initially, the neighbors were quite happy that Google had chosen this area for building their data center.
This is Sebastian Leuede, an AI ethics and society lecturer at King's College London.
They saw it as synonymous with progress, development, a new pole of innovation in the area.
But once they took a look at Google's environmental impact report for the data center, they were startled by what they learned.
They found out at some point that this Google data center was going to use 168 liters of water per second in an area facing drought.
A drought that is now in its 15th year and caused elected officials to ration water in the capital of Santiago. But after fierce protests from the community, the permit was put on hold. A local environmental court told Google it needs to modify how it plans to cool its servers. And Google's plans for a data center in Uruguay also faced pushback when locals learned how much water it would consume. And water isn't the only natural resource that AI requires. It needs a lot of electricity, too. And most of that electricity still comes from burning fossil fuels, which release the greenhouse gas emissions causing climate change. Training a single AI model produces more than 5 times the amount of carbon dioxide emissions generated from a car in its lifetime. That's including the emissions to manufacture the car and its fuel consumption once it leaves the factory. It's an astounding amount. Training an AI model and then ensuring its continued existence through large data centers is a massive drain on natural resources, and also drives up what researchers call embodied carbon.
So that's going to be the amount of carbon it took to, let's say, build the hardware. Just starting by mining the rare earth minerals that goes into the GPUs, shipping that across the world to then be manufactured into a GPU, and then shipping that GPU to its final destination at a data center, that does incur a really large environmental impact.
It's this impact that companies like Microsoft are trying to take into account as they set climate goals. Microsoft says it's aiming to be carbon negative by 2030, not just neutral, but negative. And one way it's hoping to get there is through Bolivia. More than 9,000 kilometers from Microsoft headquarters in Redmond, Washington, is a biochar facility operated by ExoMad Green. It turns forestry waste into something that's called biochar, which is essentially charcoal. ExoMad Green will produce the biochar, containing carbon dioxide, and bury it underground, where it can enrich the soil and keep CO2 from getting into the atmosphere. Microsoft has bought 32,000 tons of carbon dioxide removal credits, but that's a tiny fraction of its overall annual emissions. We don't know how much of that will grow with AI. That's one way that Microsoft can continue to expand its AI operation and data centers while saying it's still on path to being carbon negative. But is that effective enough? Or is it just a form of corporate greenwashing?
If we do something like buy carbon offsets, that doesn't negate the action that we took.
Meaning, that doesn't undo the carbon emissions that we've produced.
These two things don't cancel each other out.
As AI advances, governments and regulatory bodies are trying their best to keep up. This year, new AI rules passed by the European Parliament will go into effect, impacting businesses like Edifian. The EU AI Act does reference the impact of AI on the environment. It asks that AI systems are developed and used in a sustainable and environmentally friendly manner, though it doesn't really spell out what that means. Chile's AI laws, which were drafted before the EU rules but aren't nearly as comprehensive, don't address environmental impact either.
I think what's concerning is not only that this is not being addressed enough as it should, I think, but also that the voice of the people affected by it is not considered, right? So even if you look at research, the press, quite often they report on the environmental impact, but they don't report on how this situation can affect the livelihood or the well-being of the communities participating somehow within the value chain of artificial intelligence.
If operating a data center for your AI model is the reason why a community doesn't have access to drinking water, is that still sustainable?
We need those voices to participate as well in the governance of AI. So if the UN, for example, is coming up with new regulation, it would be great to be able to hear those communities as well, because those communities, they're not against technology or AI, but that what they will say is that if we want AI, it has to be built in dialogue with local communities.
Singapore's government was aware of the strain data centers would have on its power grid, so it enacted a 4-year moratorium on the construction of new ones. That ended in 2022. And they've now accepted build proposals from these companies: Australia's AirTrunk, Chinese data center operator GDS and TikTok owner ByteDance, and Equinix and Microsoft, based in the US. Dublin's power operator placed a moratorium on data centers in 2022. They say the Irish capital could face blackouts if new ones are built. In Europe, around 100 data center operators signed the Climate Neutral Data Center Pact, promising to be what the title implies, a climate-neutral data center by 2030. But is that even feasible? Tech companies are experimenting with green alternatives, like this Google facility in Belgium, which partly uses solar energy. And in 2021, Microsoft said it had opened 3 data centers in Sweden that run entirely on wind power. But most data centers still run on fossil fuels and rely on local power grids. This first draft of the EU's AI Act does more for the digital environment than the natural one. But as AI continues to advance, its climate impact is becoming harder and harder to ignore.
If you train on twice as much data, it takes twice as much energy. And so that pattern has really spelled over the last 10 years this dramatic increase in computational cost.
AI is the new kid on the block, and it's hard to predict what the future will look like. There's no doubt it can help us make massive gains when it comes to slowing down climate change. But in its current state, an AI model requires an enormous amount of natural resources, first to train and then to run. And not all data centers are dedicated to AI use, but we will need to build more of them as AI advances and becomes standard use in business, research, and public administration. Should regulations do more to address the environmental consequences of AI? Absolutely. Well, that's what ChatGPT thinks anyway. What about you? Let us know in the comments.